Hey everyone, how's it doing today? It is Wednesday. Hello, we're here. We said we're gonna stream on Monday because out of nowhere, Bryan Kohberger decided to accept a plea deal. So we'll see if the judge is going to accept it. I was trying to look into whether or not a Idaho judge can deny a plea deal, but it seems like those circumstances would have to be like if Bryan Kohberger was like coerced or forced to do it, or if the terms were like really maybe like seen as unfair. And honestly, in this case, I don't know if I really see the judge denying the plea deal. We looked into family members that were against the plea deal. The Gonzalez family has been, they have been very vocal about this. They do not want this plea deal to go through. I also read about how Xana Kernodle's aunt also did like an interview or maybe made a statement with TMZ. She doesn't want this plea deal to go through as well. But I did hear from social media that Ethan Chapin's family, they are going to be here and they are for this plea deal. I mean, I think it could be seen as like two different ways, right? You can either see it as, well, kind of like an eye for an eye type of thing where Bryan Kohberger murdered my child in a very cowardly way. You know, all my children were doing, like they were just trying to go to school, get an education, get their degree, right? Get their life started. And you have this coward that comes in and just fucking murders everyone while they were drunk, while they were sleeping. It's fucking awful. And then there's also the viewpoint that, just going back to the other viewpoint, that you want to see this person essentially getting the worst possible punishment, which is in America is capital punishment. Now, the other side of the thing, the other side of the coin would be, well, he is going to be sitting in jail for the rest of his life. Apparently, he's not going to be able to appeal this. So sitting in jail for the rest of his life, no appeal, no eligibility for parole. And he has to admit that he's guilty. And then there are people that don't have to show for the trial. You can save 3 months worth of witnesses' time, prosecution's time. And then there is that possibility that, okay, let's say, the evidence is overwhelming against Bryan Kohberger. Well, what happens once we get into the next stage where the jury might not necessarily agree with the death penalty, right? He might just end up getting life in prison anyways. So, yeah. Very interesting. It seems like there's a divide in the families of the victims. Hi, Sarah. How are you doing today? Hello, hello. So I thought it was going to be 11 a.m. My time because I was thinking of Washington time. And I was like, oh, Washington's in the same time zone as me. I think I'm good. And then I was like, wait a second. Why are people going live so early? I was like, oh, gosh, did I get the time wrong? And I was like, oh, it's Nelson time. Duh, of course. Ay, ay, ay. Ay, ay, ay. Iconic song. Hello. Do you know if he's supposed to do more than just say guilty? Does he have to describe what he did? We are hoping that if there is a plea deal and it goes through and the judge accepts it, that the judge is going to ask Bryan Kohberger lots of questions about it. But there's also a possibility that they might not get into, the why, the how, and all that stuff. But I think it has to be, from what I've heard, you have to say that you're guilty. And I feel like you have to give some descriptors that you are the person that committed these crimes. Only you, no one else. And you weren't forced to make this statement. You weren't coerced. Because I don't want later on them to be like, well, Bryan Kohberger, we told you he has autism spectrum disorder. Did he really have the mental wherewithal to accept this plea deal? I don't, I feel like they have to make sure this is like solidified, sure, set in stone. Absolutely sure that he did it. Because I'm already seeing, because people were saying that like, oh, well, where are the pro-burgers now? Where are Kohberger's supporters or the people that, for sure thought he was innocent from the get-go? I think that people can still say that like, well, Bryan Kohberger didn't do it. Bryan Kohberger only accepted it because the court was against him. His defense attorney made him accept it. So there's always like those arguments out there. In a lot of ways, I wish they wouldn't have offered a plea deal and let the jury decide the appropriate punishment. Seems like the families do not want this plea deal. We haven't heard from... Yes? Oh, hold on a second. My dog wants his bone. Give me a second. Gotta pause my stream for you, sir. Here you go. There you go. Okay. There's your bone. There you go. My life revolves around you, Shiro. Also, I have... the allergies are kicking it up right now. Woof. Do we know the motive for the killings? No. I mean, honestly, from everything that we've heard about him so far, It could just be like he's a really awkward kid. Maybe he's mentally, not right. And he just had a severe interest in serial killers. I actually was planning on going through the interview that his professor gave recently. She was actually his professor, and she was saying that, like, could I have inspired him to do these killings? However, you never want to just blame yourself outright, because just because you're doing something that is harmless and someone takes it the wrong way, it's not necessarily your fault. I liked how she tempered it with saying that, well, I could have also inspired people to get into like law enforcement, to get into FBI and stuff. So I can't really take on that guilt. I hope he has to admit or give some information at least, right? Like, well, okay, how did you choose your victims? I doubt they're going to go into like details like that, but that's what I want to know. How did you choose these victims? Because a lot of people think that Kaylee was the intended victim, and then it's possible that the other three were just kind of like collateral damage. Before the plea deal starts, can I ask you what you think about the Diddy verdict? I haven't been following the Diddy case. I watched the AI generated opening, and then I think it was like the direct examination of Cassie. But I haven't really been following the Diddy case so much. I did read the initial complaint against him, though. Oh gosh, it's loud in here. I'm gonna close my door. But going back to your question, we do not know the motive for the killings. It just seems like this person was just very fascinated with serial killers, and maybe he thought that he can get away with it. No appeal, in my opinion, is the only good thing that comes out of the deal, right? The fact that he won't be able to get to appeal this, the fact that family members won't have to go to court over and over again. And, we all heard about how time intensive the court cases are, the appeals, especially when someone's on death row. I feel like with a plea, we will literally never know the truth of what happened. I feel like for this one, we have like a lot of decent amount of details from things that come out from the court. I do hope that the court documents, for the most part, will be unsealed. Maybe anything regarding the victims, obviously like autopsy photos and all that stuff, like keep that sealed. But I hope they do unseal some other information that would point to Bryan Kohberger and the reason why the state thinks he's guilty, because we already had a lot. We had like the cell phone stuff, the car stuff, which cell phone people are like thinking like, we're not too sure if that's even set in stone or anything. I was really looking forward to hearing the FBI expert testify about this. But I guess while we are waiting for this, I do want to hop on over to the interview that I was listening to earlier. Let's see, with his professor.
I want to bring now the.
Oh, and then let me bring up X as well to see what's going on. Bryan Enton. I think that's Bryan Enton, right? Bryan Enton. I think that's him. He's in the courtroom right now. All right, let's see what's going on. Bryan Enton says, in line outside the courtroom waiting to go in, that was 4 minutes ago. They have us against the wall to make room for the victims' families as they walk by to enter. Everyone is silent. I'm so sad for them. Steve Gonzalez outside court says the prosecutors made a deal with the devil. Gonzalez family arrived. Steve walked the family to the front of the courthouse. They all went inside, but Steve is not leaving. He said yesterday he couldn't be in there. Ethan Chapin's family just arrived to the courthouse. They are such a wonderful family. And this is some Diddy stuff. All right. So I do want to hop on over to this one, read the transcript. So this is a professor who actually had Bryan Kohberger as her student. I think this is back in, did she say 2015? I think she said 2015. Hey, Linda, how are you doing today? Hello, hello. Just because you're autistic doesn't mean you don't know right from wrong. The fact that he has a photo from a shit-eating green 2 days after the murder sends shivers up my spine. I think it was like the morning after. So Steve Gonzalez gave an interview recently and then mentioned that they also did some investigating as well. And they found out that apparently Bryan Kohberger called off work the next morning. And then he also mentioned that his daughter, before she was ultimately brutally murdered, was attacked in the face and she had like a broken nose. But the Gonzalez family, it seems like they did a lot of investigating on their own. I don't think, well, it seems very apparent that they were not happy that the lead investigator that was assigned to this case had only 2 years of experience as an investigator, apparently. That's what they said. Crosby, how are you doing today? 84 months. Diller's walking free? What? He is? I haven't kept up with it. I know they were deciding or they were stuck on the racketeering charge. And I think the judge told him to come back and deliberate. Apparently, the defense went to the prosecution begging for a deal. That's what I heard. I heard it was the defense that initiated all this. I mean, I have to think that, how do we get to this point, right? How do we get from Ann Taylor months ago saying, my client is innocent, my families or my client's families think he's innocent, he didn't do this. And then pointing to, well, there are 4 other alternate perpetrators that could have committed this crime. And then now it's like, okay, actually, you know what? He's going to plead guilty. He did it. We just want DP off. I think it's just like them losing motions after motions after motions after motions. And, you know, we have these, I don't know. I guess like the defense feels really strongly about, I mean, it makes sense with all the coverage about this case. And then the book that's coming out, the Amazon docuseries and all that. I mean, they just kept losing so many motions after motions. And then also the judge, whenever we went through the judge's orders, I felt like it was very scathing towards the defense. The judge would essentially say that like, hey, like, you know, you guys don't really have a good reason to support what you're saying, or you're not really, you know, I don't know. I just felt like they knew the judge was definitely was very hard on them. And I would say the judge was really hard on everyone. Initially, in the beginning, the judge was very straightforward with both sides, the defense and the state, saying that, hey, I don't want you guys to come in here and just fuck around, okay? I don't want you guys to waste time. I don't want theatrics. I just want just straight up, just do your shit, okay? Do your lawyering, and we don't need the fireworks in here. So I do appreciate that. But then I think the state was like, okay, we know what kind of judge this judge is. And so I haven't really heard the state being reprimanded that much by the judge. I know in the beginning he kind of was, but then like after that, it was just mostly like him just like reprimanding the defense, pointing his fingers at them and saying that like, hey, it seems like you're just filing a delay just for a delay. You don't really have any good merits for this. But anyway, so, oh gosh, what is up with these captions? Why are they capitalized like this? So apparently the professor is a renowned forensic psychologist. Her name is Dr. Catherine Rams Lynn. She was Bryan Kohberger's professor at DeSales University at Pennsylvania. So she hasn't spoken publicly at this point, but the reason why she felt comfortable now is because, well, I guess she hears that there's a plea deal going through. She said that she first met Bryan Kohberger in 2018. I thought she said 2015, but I'm incorrect. In the fall of 2018, when he came to DeSales University. And then as soon as that, he was getting a 4-year degree as a psychology major. He selected the forensic track, which made him an advisory for her. She managed to, what's it called? He was also in my class that semester. Okay. So Bryan Kohberger was her advisory, and then he was also in her class that semester. So she's, basically says that she can't talk about Bryan Kohberger's like grades or anything super specific about him as like a student. It's kind of like, I don't know. He mentioned it was like something like HIPAA, where you can't just like give out information about your students willy-nilly. But again, she's going to reiterate that Bryan Kohberger was polite. He was curious. However, he was intense. So in the court documents, this is the same thing that we saw with other people that also evaluated Bryan Kohberger. Because remember, he was evaluated by a Dr. Orr and then 2 other specialists as well. And it was always the same thing. It was always like, oh, he was like very polite, However, he spoke very formally. He was super intense. And maybe people would see that as very awkward. And then she also said, there's no reason for me to think that it was anything other than someone who is really interested in this potential career. And then Brian Enton was like, well, was there any thing looking back now, anything strange about him that you may have noticed? And she was like, well, when I was looking back, there really isn't anything that stood out to me. So this is her, by the way. This is what she looks like. She said that there was really nothing about him that really stood out to her. And, she just thought that this was just someone or a student that was just like really interested in the field that she was in. She said there wasn't really any red flags. He was really quite respectful. He was really grateful. He would thank me for things. He was also very attentive. He would do the work, and she didn't have any concerns at all. Wow, I don't have my glasses, so this is kind of like a little hard to read this. I think it's just because I'm just used to wearing glasses now. So if I go back and forth with glasses and no glasses, it's like hard to do that. She says she had 3 undergraduate courses in the forensic track that she taught him, and he was in all 3 of them. One was Present Introduction Forensic Psychology. Another one was Death Investigation class, which was called Psychological Sleuthing. And the third one was called Dangerous Minds, the Psychology of Antisocial Behavior. She also said that he got into the graduate program in the criminal justice for a master's degree and then took a class with her. That one was called The Behavior of Criminology. And again, the interviewer is asking her like, hey, again, looking back and, you think of the curriculum of those classes and not getting into a specific experience. But when you think about... Oh,
Stephen Hitler, presiding judge.
Oh, shit, we're here, guys. All right, let's go. Oh, my gosh, it's a full courtroom. I'm sorry, no subtitles are available right now because it's live. We have Ann Taylor, Bryan Kohberger, the other 2 attorneys, Ashley Jennings, Bill Thompson. I think the new guy that hopped into the case recently. I don't know who these 2 are. And Judge Hippler. Yeah, unfortunately, it's a blurry day because the media put in a request to set up their stuff, and the judge was like, no, the court has their own streaming shit. You guys are going to use ours.
All right, this is CR 0124316665. Defendant is present in custody with counsel, Ms. Thompson, Ms. Jennings, and Ms. Taylor, Ms. Massoff, and Ms. Barlow. The state's present with Mr. Thompson, Mr. Horowitz, Ms. Jennings, and
You hope the judge rejects it.
Is here as well. Am I miss anybody? I'm sorry.
Ms. Allen is here as well.
Ms.
Your
Allen
Honor.
is here as well. Very well, thank you. All right, we are here today to entertain a change of plea. Before I start, I want to address some issues of concern and otherwise. First, I appreciate everybody in attendance today being on their best behavior. Please, no outbursts or demonstrations. Any such conduct will result in immediate removal and may result in an inability to attend further court proceedings in this case.
Why am I so nervous? I know, me too. Corey, do you think the judge will accept? I do think so. I was trying to figure out in what instances do judge not accept a plea deal. And I don't think would apply to Bryan Kohberger unless he says something out there saying that like, oh, he was forced and coerced to take this plea deal. But the judge said he wanted to address some concerns. I wonder what those concerns are.
I want to point out that there have been calls by some for the public to contact me and my office in an attempt to influence my decision-making in this case.
That was by the Gonzalez family.
This has been extraordinarily disruptive for court staff and the ability for them to get work done, not only in this case, but in other cases where defendants are entitled to have their cases processed, and frankly, as important, if not more so, for victims to have their cases processed in those cases. It's also highly inappropriate. A court is not supposed to, and this court will never, take into account public sentiment in making an opinion regarding its judicial decisions in cases. Courts should, and I always will, make decisions based on where the facts and the law lead me, period. I have not read any of the numerous messages nor listened to any of the numerous voicemails that have been sent to me and my staff. Those have all been forwarded to security and, where appropriate, to law enforcement.
Now, the Gonzalez family, I think it was when they were interviewing with Ashley Banfield on News Nation. Now, the way that he said it, I didn't get the sentiment that he was doing it to like, hey, let's just go fuck up the judge's day and let's really, you know, try to force him to be on our side. That wasn't the sentiment at all. It was just kind of like, hey, guys, like, you know, if you guys can, if anyone knows Judge Hippler, like, please, like, give him a call. Like, let us know, like, you know, how we feel about this and stuff. So even though, like, the end result sounds really disruptive and really turbulent over there in the courtroom, and the judge is really pissed. That wasn't. I don't think that's what the family wanted to happen. It was just like a plea for, like, you know, for help, basically, because they just did not agree with this plea deal at all.
I ask that you not continue to mount such campaigns or to send me information like this, because, again, it is not appropriate and, frankly, not something I would take into account when deciding a matter in a case like this. I also want people to understand some very basic concepts about the ideas of separation of powers, and what the court's duties are, and what the duties and the rights of the executive, or in this case, the prosecuting attorney, is. The executive, the elected prosecutor, is the sole authority in deciding what charges to pursue, including whether, as well as what penalties to ask for, and what penalties to pursue, including the death penalty. This court cannot require the prosecutor to seek the death penalty, nor would it be appropriate for this court to attempt to do that. This court, in considering a plea agreement, if it were to reject this plea agreement, cannot force the state to seek the death penalty. My role and power in considering a plea agreement is extremely limited. My role is to ensure that the defendant's plea is given freely, voluntarily, and intelligently. If those things are met, I can only reject a plea, such as the one in this case, where I'm not being asked to agree to the sentence in advance. I can only reject it, for example, if the defendant does not meet or admit to all of the elements of the crime. That is, I can ensure what is called a factual basis to the plea. Finally, I want to offer my apologies to all the families, including the victims' families, the families of the defendant, for the short notice for today's hearing, and I'm sure what must have been the hurried efforts to get here. I, like most everyone else, learned of this plea agreement Monday afternoon and had no inkling of it beforehand. Prior to that time, I was under the belief that this case was proceeding to trial, as had been indicated, and my staff and I were busy continuing to work on preparations to have potentially 10,000 citizens of Ada County come to jury duty starting in mid-July, with the questionnaire process in mid-July. It was, once I learned of the defendant's decision to change his plea in this case, it was important that I take the plea as soon as possible because of the extraordinary administrative efforts that were otherwise attendant to the process of this getting this trial potentially underway on time, and including the significant process of bringing, again, potentially up to 10,000 jurors to come in and fill out juror questionnaires prior to the beginning of the voir dire process. And so it was important that we, if we're going to go down this road, do so expeditiously so that we can avoid those costs and expenses associated with that. Otherwise, if it was not going to result in a plea, or if for some reason the plea were to fall through today, that we could continue diligently towards trial at the time specified. And so that obviously required that we act quickly. And so some folks may have not had the amount of time that we would otherwise allow for them to travel here. And so, again, I apologize for that. I want to make people aware that during the hearing, if you are to leave the courtroom for any reason, you will not be readmitted during the hearing.
Wonder how long the hearing's going to
Also,
be.
when we finish the hearing this morning, I ask that the public and media wait in their seats until the victims' families and the defendants' families and others are escorted out of the courtroom before you start to leave. Finally, I want to acknowledge the trial court administrator and her staff, the Ada County Sheriff, and the Ada County 4th District Marshal Service for the huge lift that they've accomplished in preparing for and orchestrating this hearing today, as well as to all the security attendant today that you see, and some of whom you, many of whom you don't see, with less than 48 hours notice. And so I appreciate the hard work that they've been doing. Frankly, some of them while they were on some vacation prior to the trial starting and had to call that short. And so I appreciate very much their professionalism
Oh, wow.
and dedication. All right. That said, let's move to the business of today. I understand the state and the defense have reached a plea agreement in this case. For the record, I have a written plea agreement which indicates in sum the defendant will plead guilty to all 5 counts in the indictment, burglary, felony, and first-degree murder, 4 counts. The state and the defendant stipulate, that is, that the defense is not free to argue for a lesser sentence at sentencing to the following. The defendant on the burglary charge will be sentenced to 10 years fixed, and that the defendant on counts 2 through 5, the 4 counts of first-degree homicide, on each count would receive a fixed life sentence, all 5 of those counts to run consecutive to one another. Defendant, as part of the plea agreement, waives his right to appeal, as well as his right to appeal the sentence and his right to seek leniency or reconsideration of the sentence under Idaho Criminal Rule 35. This is not a Rule 11 agreement, meaning the court is not bound by the plea agreement and could impose a different lawful sentence at sentencing. The stipulated agreement between the parties is the maximum on each count, so theoretically the only thing the court could do would be a lesser sentence at sentencing. But the defendant is not free to ask the court to do so under the plea agreement. Are there any other material terms of the plea agreement that the parties would like to make? Obviously, the plea agreement, the written plea agreement will speak for itself and be part of the court record.
Not from the state, Your Honor. Thank you.
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, very well. All right. Ms. Taylor, have you had sufficient time to discuss this case and all of its ramifications with your client?
I have, Your Honor.
Have you discussed fully with him his rights, defenses, and possible consequences to him of the guilty plea?
Yes, Your Honor.
Have you been able to do all the discovery you feel necessary?
Yes, Your Honor.
And have you informed your client of the importance of providing the court truthful and accurate answers in taking this plea today?
I have.
Have you apprised your client of any and all offers and counteroffers and answered his questions about those?
Yes,
Do you consent to the entry of the plea today?
I do.
All right, Mr. Kohberger, I need to ask you some questions this afternoon, or I guess it's this morning still. I do this to ensure that you so that I am assured that you understand the nature of the charges to which I understand you're going to plead guilty, as well as the possible consequences to you of your guilty pleas. I want to make sure your plea is given voluntarily, and I want to make sure that you actually committed the crimes to which you're pleading guilty, because I don't want you to plead guilty to a crime you didn't commit. If you attempt to plead guilty today, but for some reason I don't accept your plea, then it is possible that your statements today could be used against you later at trial. Do you understand that?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And now, while you're standing, actually, why don't you take the oath from the clerk?
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give in the matter
Hey, Palermo. Thank you so much for the resub.
will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
All right, and Mr. Kohberg, just to make it easier, you don't need to stand when you speak to me. I appreciate the sign of respect, but for convenience, you can remain seated, all right? Before I start asking you questions today, have you consumed, substantive questions, let me ask you, have you consumed any alcohol, drug, or other intoxicating substance that would impair your ability to understand or exercise reasonable judgment?
No.
You feel like you are thinking clearly today?
Yes.
All right, I want you to understand what the possible penalties are for each of the crimes to which I understand you're going to offer a guilty plea today. They include on count one, the burglary, a fine of up to $50,000 and a period of incarceration of up to 10 years in the state penitentiary. You may be required to pay restitution to any victims of the crime. Count 2, 3, 4, and 5 for first-degree murder. The consequences include a fine of up to $50,000, a period of incarceration of life imprisonment, which is a requirement of a sentence, that it be a life sentence with a mandatory minimum sentence of at least 10 years on each of those counts. In addition, you would be potentially responsible for a fine of up to $5,000 to each of the victims of your crime, to be enforced in the form of a civil judgment, to operate as additional punishment. This is in excess of any restitution or fines that the court could order. And again, you may be required to pay restitution to the victims of the crime. You would be required to provide, as to counts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, a DNA sample and a right thumbprint impression, and potentially pay for analysis of those samples. You would lose any right to possess, purchase, or carry a firearm, the right to serve on jury duty, the right to hold public office, and the right to vote. Do you understand the charges and all those possible consequences?
Yes.
I mean, that's a given if you're in prison.
You've heard the plea agreement that I talked about today. Do you agree with that plea agreement?
Yes.
And do you understand the nature of the charges that you've been charged with that I understand you're going to plead guilty today to?
Yes.
I don't think we're going to get details.
As I indicated, I'm not bound by the plea agreement, but the plea agreement is for the maximum on each count. Do you understand that I'm not bound by the plea agreement?
Yes.
Has anyone promised you that I would be lenient or easy on you if you pled guilty?
No.
Has anyone threatened you or anyone close to you to get you to plead guilty?
No.
Has anyone, other than the state's agreements with respect to the plea agreement, has anyone promised you anything in exchange for your plea agreement?
No.
Has anyone told you to be untruthful in answering my questions today?
No.
Has anyone offered you a reward of any kind other than the plea agreement in order to get you to plead guilty today?
No.
Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes.
And counsel, obviously there have been a number of motions filed to suppress evidence in this case. Other than those filed, are there any other motions that you felt were available with respect to Rule 12?
No, Your Honor.
And Mr. Kohberger, you understand that by entering the guilty plea in this case, you would be giving up your right to appeal any decision this court made, as well as your sentence.
Yes.
Have you had enough time to decide whether or not to plead guilty?
Yes.
Are you pleading guilty freely and voluntarily?
Yes.
Given your choices, do you believe it's in your best interest to plead guilty?
Yes.
Have you discussed fully the matter of pleading guilty with your attorney, and are you satisfied with the advice you've received?
Yes.
Has your attorney advised you to your satisfaction about what your rights are, what your defenses may be, and what the possible consequences to you of your guilty plea are?
Yes.
Has your attorney done everything you've asked them to do?
Yes.
Are you satisfied with their representation of you?
Yes.
I have received a written guilty plea advisory questionnaire that is purported to be filled out by you. Did you fill that document out?
Yes.
Did you understand the questions that you answered in this document?
Yes.
And are the answers that are outlined in this document your answers?
Yes.
Are those answers truthful?
Yes.
Did you sign the document?
Yes.
And this document outlines many of the rights that you have in this case should you not plead guilty. Did you understand those rights?
Yes.
They include a right to a jury trial. Do you understand that?
Yes.
They include a right to the presumption of innocence. Do you understand that?
Yes.
You have the right to require the state to prove your guilt as to each element beyond a reasonable doubt. Do you understand that?
Yes.
They include a right to confront your accusers and cross-examine witnesses presented by the state, including by utilizing the subpoena power of the court to accomplish that. Do you understand that?
Yes.
You understand you would have a privilege against self-incrimination and a right to remain silent, meaning you would not be compelled to testify if you did not wish to, had you not pled guilty.
Yes.
You understand you're giving up that privilege and those rights that I've just outlined by pleading guilty.
Yes.
All right, I want you to understand what the state would have had to have proven at trial had you, to the crimes that you're pleading guilty to, had you, if you didn't plead guilty. Let me find the document. Hang on a second here. All right.
Yeah, if I were the family members and I was against this plea deal, I would hate to hear his fucking voice in court. Just him answering the
So
judge, I would
as
hate
to
that.
count one burglary, the state would have to have proven that on or about November 13, 2022 in Latah County, Idaho, you unlawfully entered a residence located at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder. As to count two, the state would have had to have proven that on or about that same date in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Madison Mogan, a human being, by stabbing Madison Mogan, from which she died. As to count three, the state would have had to have proven that on that same date in Latah County, at that same address, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Kaylee Gonzalez, a human being, by stabbing her, from which she died. As to count four, the state would have had to have proven that on or about that same date in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Xana Kernodle, a human being, by stabbing her, from which she died. And then as to count five, also murder in the first degree, that on or about November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, Idaho, you did willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought, kill and murder Ethan Chapin, a human being, by stabbing him, from which he died. Do you understand those things the state would have had to have proven?
Yes.
And do you understand that by pleading guilty, the state no longer has to prove those things because you're admitting those things are true?
Yes.
You want an explanation, description of the stalking done? How long was she on his radar? When did she first get on his radar?
For the record, the defendant has provided with the guilty plea advisory form a document entitled Written Factual Basis that purports to have the defendant's signature dated 1 July 2025. Did you sign that document?
Yes.
Yeah, we're not going to get
Did
that.
you
I don't
agree
think.
with the written factual basis that is included there?
Yes.
And then let me ask you, did you, on November 13th, 2022, enter the residence at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho, with the intent to commit the felony crime of murder?
Yes.
Did you, on November 13th, 2022, in Latah County, state of Idaho, kill and murder Madison Mogan, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
Did you, on or about that same date in Moscow, Idaho, kill and murder Kaylee Gonzalez, a human being?
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, and with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
And did you, on that same date in Moscow, Idaho, kill and murder Xana Cornado?
Crazy. No emotion, lack of emotion, I guess. Yeah, no sadness in his tone whatsoever. It's just yes, yes, yes. I don't know. Maybe he's proud. Maybe this is his moment in court right now, where it's like, wow, I could finally tell the world what I did.
Cornado, pardon me, a human being.
Yes.
And did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
And then on or about November 13th, 2022, again in Latah County, Idaho, did you kill and murder Ethan Chapin, a human being?
Yes.
Did you do that willfully, unlawfully, deliberately, with premeditation and malice aforethought?
Yes.
I would ask the state at this time to provide its recitation of its factual basis had this case gone to trial.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, the organization of the recitation is different than what I think the court and the public may be familiar with from the probable cause affidavit and other documents. The state's evidence, as an overview, would show that back in March of 2022, when the defendant was residing in his parents' residence or was residing back in Pennsylvania, his home state, he purchased online a K-bar knife and sheath with an Amazon gift card that he had purchased shortly prior to the purchase of the knife, sheath, and sharpener. Jumping ahead, the end of June of that year, the defendant, Mr. Kohberger, moved from Pennsylvania to Pullman, Washington, which is right across the state line from Moscow, Idaho, for the purpose of pursuing a PhD in criminal justice at Washington State University. The state's evidence would indicate that beginning July 9th of 2022, Mr. Kohberger's phone began connecting to a cell tower that serves the area of the 1122 King Road residence in Moscow, Idaho. Now, I will acknowledge for the court and all present that there are many residences in that area. It's a dense population of mostly college-related occupants. Between July 9th of 2022 and November 7th, the defendant's phone connected to that particular tower during late night, early morning hours, 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., on approximately 23 times. Now, I will acknowledge also, we do not have evidence that the defendant had direct contact with 1122 or with residents of 1122, but we can put his phone in that area on those times. In the interim, on August 22nd of 2022, Latah County Sheriff's Deputy Darren Duke conducted a traffic stop in the early morning hour or late evening hours, about 11 p.m. On the west side of Moscow, on the Moscow-Pullman Road. This was a traffic stop of Mr. Kohberger's car, which turned out to be a 2015 white Hyundai Elantra with Pennsylvania plates. During the course of the traffic stop,
For some reason, like I hear something in the background. There's like some audio playing in the background. It's weird.
Deputy Duke was able to obtain Mr. Kohberger's name, Bryan Kohberger, his phone number, and his address, which at that point was an apartment address in Pullman. We then moved to the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022. The state's evidence would show that early morning hours on that day, Mr. Kohberger's phone left his Pullman residence, which is an apartment in kind of the central northwest part of Pullman. That phone was then subsequently turned off at approximately 2:54 a.m. and remained off until approximately 4:48 a.m. on
Oh, I think the audio is like echoed or something. Yeah, all right. I was like, am I going crazy? You know, instead of having the state do this and basically recite the facts that they have, I feel like they should just make Bryan Kohberger do this. Like, Bryan Kohberger, you go up there. You tell us what happened.
Sunday, the 13th of November. The state's evidence would include at trial video surveillance of a business on the Moscow-Pullman Highway just just across the state line from Moscow that would show a vehicle matching the description of the defendant's Hyundai Elantra entering Moscow at approximately 3:02 a.m. Compiled surveillance that the investigators put together from businesses and residents then show the defendant's car, the white Elantra, as I've described, circling the 1122 King Road area, that neighborhood, starting around 3:30 or so in the morning. Comes into the immediate area of 1122 King Road, which is actually on a dead end, and then leaves several times. And approximately 4:05 that morning, the defense car had entered that area, was leaving, stopped at the intersection of King and Queen Road, did a U-turn, and the state's evidence would show that the defendant's car came back and parked behind and above the 1122 King Road residence. The state believes that its evidence would then show that the defendant entered the residence of 1122 through the kitchen sliding door on the back side of the residence, which is the side of the residence that would face the area above where the defendant's car was parked. The defendant entered the residence, went to the third floor, and with a knife, killed Madison Mogan and Katie Gonzalez. The defendant, as he left that room, for whatever reason, ended up leaving, or the sheath for a K-bar knife was left on the bed next to Madison Mogan's body. And I can jump ahead. That sheath was tested by the Idaho State Police Forensic Lab, and single-source male DNA was found on the snap of that sheath, as well as blood from both Kaylee and Madison and other trace evidence. But it's important to note single-source male DNA was on the snap of that sheath. The state's evidence would show that Xana Knodel was still awake at this time. In fact, had taken a DoorDash order not long before this started. Her room was not on the third floor. It was on the second floor on the west side. As the defendant was either coming down the stairs or leaving, he encountered Xana, and he ended up killing her, also with a large knife. Ethan Chapin, Xana's boyfriend, was asleep in their bedroom, in her bedroom, and the defendant killed him as well with a large fixed-blade knife. Each victim suffered multiple wounds. I will state for the record that there is no evidence there was any sexual component or sexual assault on any of the victims. I want to make that clear so there's no speculation. There were two other roommates in the house, and they were already asleep. During the course of this, one of those roommates awoke, looked out her door not knowing what was going on, and saw the defendant, who was dressed in black with a black balaclava on, holding some sort of container in his hand. And she saw him leave the house through the direction of the kitchen where that sliding door is that I mentioned before. At approximately 4:20 that morning, so this would have been 15 minutes or so later, the defendant's car is seen on...
What do you think he could be holding in his hand? He said it would look like a black bucket or something, but it could be really dark and maybe you can't tell to see what's holding. But yeah, what was he holding in his hand, you think? Or did he have like a bucket of things that he used to try to clean up the crime scene or other weapons?
On a surveillance camera for 1112 King Road, which is immediately next door to the west of 1122, leaving the area at a high rate of speed. And if the court were to see that, or anybody in this courtroom would see that, you can see the car almost loses control as it makes the corner, heads north, and then turns to go south on Walinta, which is one of the only ways to get out of that part of town. The evidence would show that following that, the defendant in his Elantra drove south of Moscow. We know that he drove on the back roads because there are surveillance cameras on the main highways, Highway 95, that would have picked up the defendant's car if he'd gone that route. And they did not show the defendant's car on that route during the time. So we know that he went through a variety of back roads, a very rural, isolated part of Latah County. About 4:48 that morning, the defendant's phone comes back on. And the evidence will show that that phone was located south of Moscow, likely at a side road intersection with Highway 95. From there, the defendant's phone activity tracks it heading back north towards Pullman, Washington, where the defendant lived. About 5
I just wonder why he just didn't leave his phone in his apartment. Why bring your phone with you and then turn it on and off? Why not just leave it at home and be like, oh yeah, I was sleeping at home. What do you mean? I don't know.
5:20
Did he need the GPS or something to get there and back? Because maybe he had like a really old car. There's no GPS in it, no navigation. I don't know.
in Washington, where the defendant lived. About 5:26, starting at approximately 5:26, various surveillance cameras in Pullman, Washington pick up the defendant's vehicle as he enters Pullman from the south and heads north and slightly west towards his apartment, where he arrived at approximately 5:30 in the morning. Later that morning, this Sunday, the 13th of November of 2022, Mr. Kohberger's phone returned to the area of King Road. We don't know exactly what he did, but it returned to that area. It's about
Oh, what time was that?
the 13th of November of 2022. Mr. Kohberger's phone returned to the area of King Road. We don't know exactly what he did, but it returned to that area. It's about 9 o'clock in the morning. There for about 10 minutes, and then returned to his Pullman residence. About 9:30, the state's evidence will show, evidence taken from the defendant's phone, that he took a selfie of himself on his phone in what appears to be the bathroom of his Pullman apartment with a thumbs up. The defendant's phone then went to the Lewiston-Clarkston Valley, approximately 30 miles south of Moscow and Pullman. And the defendant is actually seen with his car at various businesses down there. This area is the confluence of the Clearwater River and the Snake River. Lewiston is Idaho's seaport. Large bodies of moving water down there. In addition to tracing the defendant's activities, as I've just outlined, on the 13th and leading up to the 13th, the state's evidence will show that following Sunday, November 13th of 2022, business records show that the defendant began searching for a K-bar knife and a K-bar knife sheath, as the state believes, to replace the one that was left at the scene of the murders. The evidence also will suggest that there were at least attempts by the defendant to delete or alter his purchase history on Amazon, where all these transactions had occurred. Later that week, the state's evidence will show that Mr. Kohberger went to what we would call DMV, motor vehicle licensing here in Idaho, in Pullman, to change his car registration from Pennsylvania to Washington. That's of note because Pennsylvania cars do not require a front license plate. The vehicle seen on the surveillance cameras of the defendant's car showed it didn't have a front license plate on it. At the time of the traffic stop by Deputy Duke in August, it was Pennsylvania plate, no front license plate. Mr. Kohberger proceeded.
Hello. Come in. Cheryl wanted to come into the office.
To finish his semester of studies at Washington State University and return to Pennsylvania for the holidays. Law enforcement at this point were aware of Mr. Kohberger, had been accessing information about him, were trying to find him. They located him in Pennsylvania, and they conducted what's called a trash pull. During the nighttime hours, agents of the FBI, who assisted immensely with this case, working with the sanitation department back in this neighborhood in Pennsylvania, took trash that had been set out on the street for collection, sent the contents of that from the Pennsylvania residence of the defendant's parents to the Idaho State Forensic Laboratory, where the lab experts there were able to identify DNA on a Q-tip as coming from the father of the person whose DNA was found on the knife sheath that was next to Madison Logan's body in the bed. Subsequently, an arrest warrant was issued here in Idaho, and a search warrant was issued in the state of Pennsylvania with the assistance not only of the FBI, but the Pennsylvania State Police. Mr. Kohberger was arrested at his parents' home to return to Idaho. Upon his return to Idaho, a DNA sample was taken from him, and it matched the DNA found on the knife sheath next to Maddie's body at the crime scene.
I wonder if we're going to see the body cam footage of him getting arrested, because apparently when he was in the back of the vehicle and they were like driving him, he was like, hey, like, you know, when this is done and over, like, we should get coffee sometimes. Like, the fuck?
I can tell the court, the public, the weapon itself, the knife, has not yet been recovered. I can tell the court that the defendant's apartment in Pullman was searched, as well as his office. Spartan would be a kind characterization. There was virtually nothing there. Nothing of evidentiary value was found. And of course, we are now talking 6-8 weeks after the time of the killings. In Pennsylvania, the defendant's car was seized, and it was actually pretty much disassembled internally. And it also had been cleaned. There was a bucket of cleaner right beside it. I think we can all look to our own cars, in those compartments in the doors. We try to keep them clean where you put stuff. There's always some degree of crud in there. They were spotless. The defendant's car had been meticulously cleaned inside. And the state would present to the jury that that was part of the defendant's plan in covering up this. The defendant has studied crime. In fact, he did a detailed paper on crime scene processing when he was working on his pre-doctorate degrees, and he had that knowledge and skill. So
I mean, what if this is not his first time? What if there are some missing people that they uncover later on in the future?
Honor, at the end,
that were near his area that he lived. That would be crazy.
the state submits that the evidence that I've given just a quick overview of, and that to present in court would consume weeks, which the state is prepared to do and has been prepared to do, would show that as the defendant has just admitted and pleaded guilty on November 13th, 2022, Mr. Kohberger entered the residence at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho. He did that with the intent to kill. We will not represent that he intended to commit all of the murders that he did that night, but we know that that is what resulted, and that he then killed intentionally, willfully, deliberately, with premeditation, and with malice aforethought, Manny Mogan, Kaylee Gonzalez, Ethan Chapin, and Santa Cruz. Thank you.
Thank you.
You wonder where he disposed of the knife? It seems the state's theory is that that morning afterwards, when he was like, I think he went to like Costco or something and like some other shopping area, but he went to an area where there's like a large body of water. He could have just dumped the knife in broad daylight somewhere out there possibly. Or maybe somewhere in the woods when he was driving back from King Road to his apartment. But I would say the safest bet, probably just into the waters. And then by that point, if they ever find it, maybe the DNA will be, or any sort of evidence would just be degraded by then.
All right. Based on the state's proffer and importantly, based upon defendant's explicit admission to committing these crimes, the court finds there is a factual basis. Therefore, with respect to count one, burglary, felony, how do you plead, Mr. Kohberger, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count two, murder in the first degree, as it relates to the murder of Madison Mogan, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count three, as it relates to murder in the first degree for the murder of Kaylee Gonzalez, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count four, the first degree murder of Xana Kernodle, a human being, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
As to count five, the first degree murder of Ethan Chapin, a human being, how do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Right. The court will find that the defendant understands the nature of the charges and each offense and the possible consequences to him of his guilty plea. The court finds that there is a factual basis for the plea and that finds the defendant believes the plea to be in his best interest. I find that the plea was given freely, voluntarily, and was intelligently made. I accept the plea. I direct that it be entered. I'll continue the matter for sentencing in this case. I think it was mentioned on the call Monday afternoon, the defense wishes to waive a pretrial investigation. Is that accurate?
Yes, Your Honor.
That first guilty sound like I nailed it, sounded so proud. Yeah.
The state also?
Yes, Your Honor, the state does not believe pre-sentence investigation is needed given the evidence that is available. We want to, though, make sure that all of the victims have the opportunity to make statements to the court at sentencing.
Absolutely. And certainly both the state and the defense may present whatever sentencing memorandum and other documents you wish me to consider. The victims will be given an opportunity to provide the statements that they wish to at sentencing. Do we need more than one full day for sentencing?
I do not believe so, Your Honor. Obviously, we have numerous victims, and we have victims who share unique who share unique perspectives on this, and we want to make sure that they all have time to express their feelings to the court. But I believe that if we can start perhaps 8:30 or so in the morning, that we should be able to complete it all in one day.
Defense agree with that in terms of the time frame?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. So as it happens, we have some time reserved in this case in July and August.
Yeah. Court
The week of
freed up
July
now.
22nd is available. I don't know if that's too soon for the parties, or the next week, the week of August 4, is available. Any preference?
Your Honor, we're prepared as soon as the court wants to schedule it.
The state, I believe, would be prepared on the 22nd. We've told the victims' families that we're looking at approximately those dates.
All right. So because of the plan to bring in so many jurors to fill out questionnaires, I had ordered that no other trials could take place in this courthouse the week of July 22nd. And so we will use that in terms of the sentencing date because of what I'm sure will be the significant interest of the media and the public, and the logistics that will be required to make that happen. Without trials going, it'll be a lot easier to do that. So let's pick that week. Why don't we pick July 23rd with the idea that if for some reason we don't finish, we could continue into the 24th. And we'll start at 9 in the morning. Does that give your team enough time, Sandra? 9 in the morning? All right. Any concerns with that date?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
No, sir.
All right. Any reason why I should not rescind the non-dissemination order at this time?
You're right. I think that given the history of this case, it would be best if that remained in place through sentencing. So we have time to make sure there's the ability to completely answer questions. That would be the state's preference and recommendation.
We'd have no objection for the order to remain in place through
All
sentencing.
right. I will, at this point, the idea to keep it until sentencing, which time it would be.
I can't wait for the non-dissemination order to be rescinded. Oh my gosh, I want to hear so much about what people think about this case, like the people that are involved in this.
Withdrawn in order to give the parties the space and time to prepare to meet what I'm sure will be the deluge of media requests. That's at least my preliminary decision at this point. We can always revisit if it seems to be, for some reason, I should. That said. Obviously, I don't think the defendant, a bond was ever set for the defendant. Were it would be revoked. The prior order allowing him to come in civilian clothes is revoked, given his plea and no longer the presumption of innocence. And in fact, now the actual conviction for the crimes. He will continue to be held at the jail pending sentencing. Is there anything else today?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
I assume that the trial date will be vacated
trial
and those
is-
4 jurors will be released.
The trial will be vacated, and I'm sure that the jury commissioner will get word to those that receive their summons that they won't be required to attend. So
Thank you, Your Honor.
that said, again, if you would all please wait for the parties and the victims' families and others to leave the courtroom before you do, I would appreciate it. And with that, we're adjourned. All right, please.
Crazy. I don't like that he won't go to trial. Not sure why. It's a squeezy bean art. Hey, how are you doing today? I think it's that feeling that it's the defense that wants this. So the defense went to the state and they wanted to make this plea deal. It's kind of like he's getting what he wants at the end, even though, you know, it's like life in prison. And he won't be able to appeal this. You know, he's going to be there for the rest of his life. No chance of parole, no hope of ever getting out, right? And I think it's different because in trial, the defense is trying so hard to prove that he's innocent. And then when that 12 jury, when they make their decision, they're like, nope, actually, you're fucking guilty. That just seems more satisfying. I can see why. The end result of that seems satisfying. But it's not like he's getting, you know, like, yes, he's not getting death penalty. It's not like he's, you know, because I would have been pissed if it was like, oh, he gets out in like 40 fucking years or something, you know, like he got 40 years and then he was like eligible for parole. That would be like really fucked up. But he's in there forever. He can't fucking appeal this. He won't be able to hurt anyone in the public ever fucking again. And he's gonna be a fucking loser. Like every serial killer, he doesn't wanna die. Yeah. No, I didn't see the Diddy trial stuff. You guys were just telling me about it when I was starting the stream. Shuby says, did he actually kill these students? I didn't follow the case. The evidence that was coming out against him were really compelling. And the more we found about this case, the more fucked he seemed. Bye. This is absolutely what the defense wanted from day one. I mean, I think from day one, they wanted to have a lot of the evidence thrown out. They were hoping for the investigative genetic genealogy to be thrown out. That wasn't thrown out. The judge kept that in. They were hoping for to omit the testimony, I think, of the guy who testified about the cell towers, the surveillance footage. They weren't able to get that out. They were able, however, to get the trial moved from Lake County to Ada County, and that delayed the trial by 10 months. But subsequent to that, they were not able to get the DP removed. They were unable to stall the trial because of the leak that came out and the document, like the documentary that came out about this case. So they just kept losing motion after motion after motion after motion. And yeah, it looks really bad because it's like, well, how the fuck did your DNA get on the fucking knife sheath? And the victims were stabbed to death. That looks really bad. So there's just a lot about this case that, yeah, it was very compelling to think that, yeah, Bryan Kohberger fucking did it. Now, I do want to say this, though. Rain said him getting to explain it would only give him more satisfaction. People like him love the idea of reliving stuff like that. And then Hear Me Out said, that's a funny name, said, Rain, I understand the point, but the conspiracy nuts need to hear him explain what he did to prevent stupid theories in books in a few decades. The people that are like fucking like crazy about this case or just conspiracy theorists in general, they will never listen to reason. Even if Bryan Kohberger, like right now, is saying that he pleads guilty to these crimes, they'll always find a way to kind of like circle around and say like, oh, well, he's only pleading guilty because X, Y, and Z. You know, he has this, he has that. He's forced to do it. The defense made him do it. And, you know, there's always going to be some way for them to explain their own perspective. Like, it doesn't really matter. People are kind of crazy these days. I don't know. They'll always look for ways to support their theories and ignore everything else. People want to let the Menendez brothers out. They want to give Scott Peters a new trial for killing his wife. The Menendez brothers, I don't know. That one I feel kind of like conflicted because, or maybe it's just like the sympathy thing. Because I heard about how his, because I watched the Netflix stuff, but I didn't finish it. But I did start hearing about how the dad was like really abusive and stuff like that. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe those were lies, right? But there was like this letter that came out that showed that the brother was really scared of the dad. And that the dad was like maybe like sexually like abusing them and stuff like that. I don't know. And then the mom was just like kind of just letting it happen. I don't know. That one I had like a lot of mixed feelings. So I was like, damn, I feel like they've been in jail for a very long time. You know, maybe do let them out. But like, again, I don't know the entire details about that case. I just know from what I saw on Netflix and what I've read about it. But I've never seen like the actual trial or read the transcripts or anything like that. All right. So it seems like there's some movement. I'm just going to mute it. Seems like there's like a lot of movement happening in the courtroom. But yeah, there were the victim families are leaving court. I know. I wish he was forced to disclose everything. You tell us what you did, not having the state go up there and be like, oh yeah, this is the evidence we have against him, right? I just want him to go up there and tell us what he did and then give us the details that no one else knows about, that only the killer would know. That way, for sure, for certain, you know, later on, I don't know, maybe his family members would be like, oh, actually, well, he only accepted the plea deal because of this, this, and this, and this, and that, you know? So. Offren says you're feeling conflicted with the Menendez brothers too, but I'm okay with them getting out. Yeah, I mean, I feel conflicted, but I don't know like every single little details about their case. But yeah. Anyways, so let's pop on over to this right here with the former professor, because she had some things to say about Bryan Kohberger's alibi. And she was like, well, when I heard his alibi, I was kind of like, what the fuck? And then we'll wait to see if the family members are speaking out. So I have that on my second monitor right now. So this is a professor that taught him. He was in many of her classes. And so she was like, okay, well, I didn't want to talk about this case before, but now that he's taking a plea deal, I feel like I could talk about a little bit about him. All right, so antisocial behavior is one of the antisocial behavior involves serial killers and has mass murderers. We do a lot of case analysis. Used to, that she wrote, I think there's a book that she wrote about the BTK killer, and it seems like Bryan Kohberger may have had a fascination with that killer, possibly. She mentioned that the book that she wrote, it was a very intense book. Also, the one I have called The Mind of the Murderer, which is about various experts over the past century who interviewed killers, mass murderers, and serial killers to get as close as possible, spending a lot of time with them to get to understand their process of becoming a criminal. She said that now looking back, I would maybe look at some of these things that maybe have interested in him, but something that gives me pause. We always have to think that. Did someone like type out these? I don't know why this is not auto generated. They just like typed out these captions. Oh gosh. Yeah, so she was just thinking that like, oh, did she have an influence on Bryan Kohberger and the reason why he committed these crimes? However, she's like saying that like, well, my type of work could also influence people to get into law enforcement, to get into work into FBI and doing good for the world. So she can't really be, just I guess be held accountable for possibly influencing Bryan Kohberger, because you never know. Like you could be putting out good information out there, but you never know what people are going to do with it, right? Now I want to talk about I think it was the alibi. Yeah, she talks about how Bryan Kohberger was a really promising student. She thought that he could make a mark in this career in a very positive way, and that, she wouldn't have expect someone like Bryan Kohberger, I guess, to commit these horrible crimes. She said that when he was first initially arrested, that she was actually really shocked, and she was confident that he was going to be able to prove his innocence. But then she said that months went by, and she was saying that, like, if you have an alibi, why are you just sitting in jail? Give us your alibi, and then you can get out. But then when they talked about, when Bryan Kohberger basically said what his alibi was, which is not really an alibi, it's like, oh, I was driving out in the middle of the night, possibly, he liked to stargaze. And I think the state has kind of like rebut that, saying that like, well, actually the weather conditions that night wouldn't have been able for you to see any stars that night because it would have been too cloudy, I guess. But this is the part that I thought was really interesting. Right here.
And his demeanor that we saw on media was that he was confident that he was going to be able to prove his innocence. So I wanted to wait and see. I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. But as months go by and he kept saying that he had an alibi, and I wondered, well, why are you sitting in jail? Give us your alibi, get out. And that wasn't happening. And then it was really when he said his alibi, and it was clearly not an alibi, and he would have known that, certainly from all the classes that he had through undergraduate and graduate work, he would have understood that wasn't really an alibi. I think that was when I was really, floored that this is my student who has done these things.
You mentioned, you studied BTK, the serial killer. You met with him many times in prison. This is what you do in a hope to prevent these things from further happening and understand the mind of a serial killer. Would you want to study Bryan Kohberger? Have you put any thought into that? Is that something that you think could be possible?
I've been thinking about that for 2.5 years. I would.
And I'm sure he'll be very happy to participate in that. I feel like just having anyone reach out to him about this. The Menendez brothers clearly did it for the money. They killed their mom. Why give a pass on that? They never said she did anything bad to them. Like I said, I don't really know like everything about that case, but I know it was like either they did it for money or they murdered their dad because their dad was a piece of shit that was like sexually harassing them. And then the mom kind of just like stood by and let it happen and didn't give a fuck. Or it could just be with both, right? It could be like the dad was a piece of shit in them and sexually harassing them. The mom wasn't doing anything. And then they also wanted their money. It's like a win-win. But like I said, I don't really know too much about that case. All right, let's see if we have any statements from the family members yet or anyone. I guess not. And then there was this other thing that popped up as well. Let me see if we can pull it up really quick. So what do you guys think about the plea deal? What are your thoughts on it? Even if it was abuse, it doesn't justify the brutal assault murder by the shotguns. I mean, using the shotgun on your family members, that's like, I don't know. I feel like that's like a lot of like emotional like hatred towards them. Like, I fucking hate you. I'm using a shotgun because I want to make sure you're fucking dead and you're shredded to pieces so you don't ever come out of this alive. I would assume there was a lot of like emotion behind it, but it could just be like, oh, I want to make sure you're dead because I want to steal your fucking money, right? But I could see it being either way. Let me see if I can find Steve Gonsalves's interview that he did recently. Oh, this one right here. You can pull up the transcript. All right, still nothing yet on this page. But what is going on with the Menendez brother? I know they recently had a hearing about it. Is the judge just going to make this decision, or what's going on? Because I'm going to be pretty honest, I don't really care what their family members think. Because I know the Menendez brothers, I think their family members were like cool with having them being released. I think some of the family members were like the victims, like siblings. I think. For me, I'm like, I don't really care about the family members, because sometimes family members, like, they could just be shrouded and they could just be kind of like blinded by emotions. Sometimes I'm talking about the Menendez brothers, not this case. Let's see. I wanted the transcript right now. But there was an interview that he did that he was talking about how they were doing their own investigating and they found out that Bryan Kohberger called off work the next morning. And then they gave a little bit more details about their daughter, Kaylee. So it seems like the theory is that the reason why the knife sheath was left behind was obviously not something that you want to do, right? You're leaving behind possible crucial evidence. But they believe that Madison was attacked first because she was probably passed out. I think she was like maybe more drunk. And then Kaylee woke up during that. And then Kaylee tried to defend herself. And then during that moment, it's possible that's when Bryan Kohberger dropped the knife sheath, or maybe like it came off of his own personal body, maybe. And then he probably like, left the room in such an adrenaline, and that he didn't realize the knife sheath was left behind. They used shotguns because they weren't able to get handguns. Yeah, I don't know how hard it was to get like what's it called? Firearms back then. This was like back in the early 90s, right? Like either late 80s or like the early 90s. Rain says Bryan Kohberger needs a blessing from Chad Daybell. I'm really sad that Chad Daybell hasn't had a chance to call Lori. Oh, did any of you guys watch the interview with Lori and Brian? Sorry, not Nate Eaton. I'm getting all the names mixed up. Well, what's more than anything, I wanted to know what his real motive was, how much he planned in advance, what was he think that made him want to commit a murder? I don't know. It could just be that like he felt like he was a nobody, didn't have any friends, didn't really have anyone in his life. I mean, he had his family members, right? But it could just feel like, like I'm a nobody. I haven't done anything in my life. And for some reason, just has a fascination and would just idolize people that were horrendous in society. There are just some people out there that are just like that. Based on what the state said that, so here's like the timeline that the state has, right? State says that March 2022 that he purchased a K-bar knife sheath and sharpener and then the Amazon gift card. So by that point, he would have been done with his education in Pennsylvania. So maybe, you know, when he was taking courses in Pennsylvania, he realized that his fascination lies more with the people that committed the crimes, not necessarily with the heinous of the crimes that they committed and in solving them, right? Maybe that's something that he realized. So maybe he purchased, like, you know, the K-bar knife, the knife sheath, the sharpener, moved to Washington, was like, hey, I'm in a new person in a new town. Maybe he tried making friends, and maybe he couldn't make friends. He was, you know, fuck these people, fuck this community. I don't know. Or maybe he didn't even want to make friends. Maybe he just wanted to find a victim all along. But it seems like he moved to Pullman, Washington in June. That was like 2 months after purchasing the knife sheath, and the sharpener. And by July, it seems like maybe he was driving around trying to find his next victims. They said by July 9 that he connected to the cell tower that serviced 1122 King Road. However, the cell tower covers a really large, densely populated area. This is like a college town, they said. And again, from July 9 to November 22nd, it seems like he was driving around late night from 10 p.m., 4 a.m. He connected with the same cell tower 23 times. And now it could also be something as like, oh, you know, the area is nearby. It's like 10 to 15 minutes. Maybe he was doing something else around 10 p.m. to 4 a.m., right? Maybe he was doing the stargazing thing, you know? But, you know, this could really be seen as, oh, he was hunting around trying to find his next victims. But who knows how long before it took for him to decide on, you know, 1122 King Road. Or if 1122 King Road was just like a residence that he chose maybe like a couple weeks before the murders happened, or a couple days, or maybe the same day, right? Maybe he was just trying to get a good feel of like, okay, this area, I wonder how many, I need to know like what the roads are like. I need to be familiarized with it because I'm going to have to try off my phone. I won't have GPS. Maybe, I don't know, because maybe he's not going to input it in his car. Maybe he was just trying to get familiar with the area and not necessarily with stalking his victims. The state did maintain that there's no evidence that he had direct contact with the residents or with the house itself or the resident. So, like I said, it could just be him driving around, familiarizing himself with the area, right? Not just taking the highway, but taking the back roads instead. And, you know, maybe the house was just a house that he chose like that night. I don't know. No idea. But the interesting thing was him returning back to the crime scene. Like, I don't know. It's like we always hear about that, right? It's like law enforcement, when they are responding to a crime scene or when they're going to one of those like memorial services, they always kind of like look around to see like anyone strange in the crowd, because sometimes we hear about these people tend to go back to where the crime scene was, or they tend to want to be involved in the investigation, or they want to, you know, with their own eyes witness, you know, the family members being hurt and all that stuff. So it's so crazy to me that he decides to return to the crime scene at like 9 a.m. in the fucking morning. But I guess like he saw that last roommate was probably too tired to attack her because he had just killed 4 other people, right? Although 2 of them seemed to have been asleep. And he probably made the assumption that she was going to call 911, and that's why he booked it out of there. He got into the car, he drove out, and the state prosecutor said that he booked it out so fast that it seems like he was about to kind of like slip out. And so probably thought that 911 was going to, like, you know, 911 was called and the police were coming. But then the interesting is like him stopping by again at 9 a.m. with his own same fucking car. That's so crazy to me. And I'm assuming that when he went there again around, when he went there back there again, I guess he took his phone with him. I don't know. It's so weird. So crazy. I don't know. And then when he realized like, oh, okay, well, law enforcement's not here yet. I guess no one knows what happened. I don't know. You go back home and you take a fucking selfie. I don't know. But they do think that after that morning, like I said, the Gonzalez family said that he apparently called off work that morning. But apparently, as he was, you know, running some errands or maybe pretending to run errands, there was a large body of water nearby there where he could just chuck the knife into there. And then, you know, by the time if law enforcement were to ever find it, you know, any sort of DNA that would have been on there could have been degraded by then. Any sort of evidence. Your parents adopted you from aliens. Dice. Hey man, how are you doing today? What a monster. Yeah. Not an ounce of remorse, regret, sadness, whatsoever. Yeah. But I wonder if he's going to say anything at sentencing. I mean, I feel like there's no point in saying anything in sentencing, right? Because the judge did say that the judge did say that the court was not bound to their sentencing agreement. However, given that he was given the harshest sentencing minus DP, that if the court were to not follow the sentencing guidelines that they set, it would be the court giving him something less, which the court can. Well, I guess it would make sense for him to try to plead. I don't know, because they did have that stipulation where they couldn't ask for less. So I don't think there's any point in him saying anything. I don't think he's going to say anything. Yeah, the court said that he got a document from the BK signed, but that the document could just be the reiterations of what the questions that the court was asking him earlier, right? Where it was just like, I mean, let's go back to it. They're just the boring questions. I mean, boring, but you know, they are very important questions, but you know, boring in terms of like, we just want to know why, how, like give us some details, you know? So again, it's just like, okay, well, you know, no one promised you that, you know, if you pled guilty, that there'd be any leniency. No one threatened you to plead guilty. There was no promise of anything in exchange of the plea agreement, that you're being truthful to me, that no one offered you anything to plead guilty. Are you pleading guilty because you're really guilty? Right? And that you talked to your attorneys and you had time to decide to plead guilty, that your attorney advised you of your rights. I feel like we just had the verbal version of what was probably on that piece of paper. I don't think that piece of paper has any details or anything like that. I'm just making that assumption. I just feel like it's just like, hey, let's just make sure this guy wasn't coerced to make this plea deal, or that he wasn't tricked into making this plea deal, or that his defense attorneys like promised him anything, or, you know, who knows what, right? So I don't think that piece of paper that Kohberger filled out the questionnaire and signed, it's probably just like the same thing of what was being asked of him in the courtroom. Yeah. I guess I was wondering if it was like, yes, I did it, right? It's like, did you do it? Yes. Okay. How did you do it? Why did you do it? What is a detail that only the killer would know? But maybe that's just like something that we only see in movies. Oh, but I could definitely understand how it feels less satisfying. Like what we saw today in today's hearing, it's like, yes, he's pleading guilty to everything, but why does it feel not as satisfying? It's because the defense went to the state asking for this plea deal and they got it. What does Anjanette have to say?
And this is where Bryan Kohberger, in spectacular fashion, just entered pleas of guilty to the murders of Maddie Mogan, Kaylee Gonsalves, Ethan Chapin, and Xana Kernodle.
Movies get it from somewhere, yeah, but then they like might take like the base idea of it and then just like overly flourish it. No, Corgi, many courts require that type of explanation. I mean, I think it depends on the courts, depends on the state, depends on the judge. I think it depends on a lot of things. Or maybe that would happen in sentencing. I don't know, because you guys were telling me that there were some other serial killers that were forced to explain what they did and all that stuff. But maybe it's because in those cases, maybe they didn't have enough details about the how and the how, I guess. Maybe in this one we have like more details about it. Again, because remember, a lot of the stuff we don't have access to. They've been sealed. So maybe the judge is like, well, I already fucking know how you did it and all that stuff because, you know, he's probably already saw all the evidence. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know. But I do wonder, so they are going to rescind the non-dissemination order. I think they're just waiting for the sentencing to happen. So we'll get to hear from the family members, maybe law enforcement, anyone that's been involved in this case. And then also, yeah, I will keep an eye out to see if they unseal any court documents because I would love to know more about the evidence that they had against him. But like I said, the state did make it clear that they weren't able to tie Kohberger to the house and the victims. Like he wasn't like following them on Instagram or social media or anything like that, it seems. That's why I think that he was just driving around to get, he was driving around the area, learning the back roads, learning Washington, Idaho, and maybe he just decided to choose that house that night, or maybe it was just like, you know, before the couple days before they were murdered. You wonder if he read a book from jail or do a tell-all kind of thing or fade into oblivion in himself forever. I hope he doesn't write anything or do interviews personally. I don't know. But I do feel bad for his family members though, because even though it's like, yeah, if you're like the parents, it's like, how do we create such a fucking monster? And, you know, sometimes it's like not the parents' fault. Sometimes, you know, you did whatever you can to raise your kids, what you think is the right way, and then they just turn out like this, right? But I do feel bad for his family as well. I feel bad for like the siblings. But we don't know what the family dynamic was like. Maybe they were assholes. I don't know. I have no idea. But I always assumed that, you know, people were typically pretty good. I haven't really heard too much about the families. And I think initially when Kohberger was arrested, the family gave a pretty decent statement. It wasn't like nothing too crazy, outrageous or anything. It was just like, oh, hey, like, you know, we're going to stand by our son. We're going to let law enforcement do their thing. And we're so sorry to hear about the victims and the family members. It's tough and all this stuff. Yeah, a lot of people are hoping that he's going to be forced for allocution. But I don't know if we'll get to that point in sentencing. We'll have to wait. His family, I feel like, is so comparable to the movie. We need to talk about Kevin with Tilda Swinton. We need to talk about Kevin. What's that? Oh, so I was watching a movie that you guys were telling me about. A Few Good Men with Jack Nicholson and Tom Cruise. It's like a early 90s movies, I think. And, Demi Moore is in it as well, right? Is that her name, Demi Moore? Or... Oh, no. Yeah, Demi Moore is in it. Because I was like, wait, is it the other girl, Demi Lovato? I get the names mixed up. And so I was like, why am I watching this movie again? I forgot why. And then we got to the part where Jack Nicholson was testifying in the stand. And then he was like, you can't handle the truth. And I was like, oh, that's why I'm watching this movie. Dude, so funny. But yeah, I finished the movie yesterday. I enjoyed it. Thank you so much. Hey, Edward, how are you doing today? Okay, so we need to talk about Kevin. I will add it to my list. I love Tilda Swinton. Eva Kachadorian is a travel writer publisher who gives her beloved freedom and bohemian lifestyle to have a child with her husband, Franklin. Pregnancy does not seem to agree with Eva, but what's worse, she does give birth to a baby boy named Kevin. She can't seem to bond with him. When Kevin grows from a fussy, demanding toddler into a psychopathic teen. Oh, Ezra Miller's in this? Oh gosh. Eva's forced to deal with the aftermath of her son's horrific act. Oh, Ezra. What is going on with Ezra Miller? I haven't heard anything about him. I heard he was going like on a crazy rampage in like fucking Hawaii and something and like, I don't know, a bunch of crazy shit. But then I stopped hearing about him in the news. So maybe he's just chill now or something. I don't know. It's a movie about a child becomes a serial killer and attacks a school, but it focuses on the mother's perspective, how she raised her son and couldn't prevent his actions. All right, guys. Well, so July, we actually have 2 sentencings. Honestly, I'm not really expecting any fireworks for the sentencing at Bryan Kohberger. But when I say fireworks, I mean like anything coming from Bryan Kohberger, anything coming from the judges, anything coming from the attorneys. I am, however, looking forward to hearing from the victims' families, though. But man, I'd be so nervous if I was them because just like speaking and like, I don't know, this has like been almost like 3 years now, all the pent up anger, sadness that you've had about this case. And the guy's like right fucking there. And oh gosh. So it's probably going to be one of those things where it's like, hey, you can't address Bryan Kohberger. You have to address me, the judge, which I hate. I'm like, just give him a chance to just vent and just address the fucking defendant, you know? But I get why they don't do that. Anyways. Someone told me that Diddy was found guilty on like the lesser charges, the ones that were like weren't really too crazy, the minor charges, I guess, and then not on like I think racketeering. I think they were unable to come to a decision, right? Or did they decide after all? He recently was on some red carpet. He looks like a rodent person. What the fuck is a rodent person? He looked like a rat. I also hate that if I was a parent, I wanted to directly talk to him. Yeah, I would want to directly talk to him with my fists. Would I ever consider doing a collab with Linda? It's a crime. Oh, I don't know what that channel. I'm not familiar with them. Yeah. Barry Morphew case. Dude, the Barry Morphew case, I'm so glad there's been progress on that case. I really thought that because there's like some really weird shit happening in the state prosecution's office. Luckily, there's a new prosecutor that's prosecuting the Barry Morphew case, but there was some really weird shit happening in that case. And I was like, what the fuck, dude? Like, this is crazy. Yeah, I thought it was really wild. And so I thought Suzanne Morphew was just going to be lost into oblivion and no one would ever give a fuck ever again. I don't know. I just thought it was like really, really fucking sad. But I'm so glad that they have decided to arrest Barry Morphew again and then hopefully try the case again. And we'll see what happens with that. I really hope we get a Barry Morphew update, but I honestly wasn't expecting it. Apparently, Barry like rebranded himself. He moved to Arizona and then changed his name to Lee. That's what I heard that was being reported. Yeah, he changed his name to Lee because he was obviously like, you know, trying to like restart his life. And he was dating someone. I remember hearing about that. And I was just like so fucking pissed. I was like, oh my God, like look at this guy, just like starting over, new again. He's already dating someone. Like, oh gosh, so annoying. And I think you know, when he was released, so when they dismissed his case that day, he was walking out of the courtroom so proud, you know, and his daughters was with him because they believed that their dad didn't do it. And I was like, oh gosh, like I don't know. I don't know. That one just like really like annoyed me, but I'm glad that there's been some movement, and hopefully, you know, Barry will have his trial, and then we'll see from there. We'll see what happens. But it would just really upset me if I was like the family members of Suzanne's, and then no one went to trial. Nothing was happening. The state prosecutors fucked up so badly, and it's just like that's it, right? But yeah. In my opinion, the plea was a huge win for justice. No appeals. Yeah, I'm very happy about the no appeals part. I can certainly understand why the family members want him to have the most severe punishment that he can get, which is capital punishment. I certainly understand that. But I do think that him being in life in prison forever, he'll never be able to hurt anyone else, at least in the public. Who knows what's going to happen in jail. But the fact that he won't be able to be eligible for parole or to even appeal this, you know, this plea deal, I think it's great. But I could see why people are upset, because this is something that he wanted. This is something that he came to the state for, like begging for, like, hey, can we please have a plea deal and take off DP off the table? So I can understand why people are like really upset about this. It was expected to be guilty on all but RICO charges. I don't know. I didn't watch the trial. I wonder if they just didn't have compelling evidence against him, or if the evidence was compelling and I don't know, maybe the jury was just meh or something. We should give the daughters grace. It's hard for adult children to believe that one parent killed another. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I definitely do believe that, one, you lost one parent. You don't want to believe that the other parent is a killer, especially the murderer of your other parent, right? That's like something that's like really hard to kind of just like juggle with, especially if you've been raised by both of them. And, you know, maybe the parents were pretty decent at shielding the kids from the drama that was happening between the two of them, right? Or maybe they witnessed some of it, right? But to go from my mom was murdered and she was murdered by my dad, like, yeah, that's like something that's like really hard to even come to accept to. And then you know, probably them finding out that Suzanne was having a full-blown affair, that probably upset them as well. And they probably just felt like, oh, poor dad, you know, poor dad. Mom died, dad is grieving. Mom died, and then she also had an affair. Dad is grieving, and he was like super sad, being cheated on. So I could totally understand why the kids would be on like the parents' side. So, and then also, it's not like they are. I don't know. Like I feel like some people take the approach that, because I wouldn't expect their kids to go out there seeking evidence that would show that their dad is guilty. You might just want to be like, you know what? Like, fuck that. I know my dad. I know who he is. I grew up with him. There's no way in hell he's guilty, right? And just ignore everything else. I could totally see that happening. In the long run, I hope the families find a blessing in this plea deal. From what was reported, I heard Ethan Chapin's family were okay with it. They support the plea deal. I haven't heard, I think Xana Kernodle, I only heard that her aunt was really upset. I don't know if there were other family members that talk about it. And then I heard mixed information about the Mogan family. I initially heard the Mogan family was in support. Then I heard the Mogan family was not in support. I don't know. It's been kind of mixed. A guilty at trial or DP is not guaranteed. I think Casey Anthony, or for example, DP for what's that other crazy's name? Oh my God, why am I forgetting? Oh, Jodi Arias, right? Jodi Arias. The death penalty part of it took a while, and then they ultimately did not want to give her the death penalty. I think the same was it the same thing for the Parkland shooter as well. Parkland shooter was facing death penalty, and then ultimately the jury decided against it. OJ's kids stay by his side. You know, it would be so interesting to just rewind the time back and then be around the whole OJ case thing. But I can't believe the OJ trial was like 9 months long from what I've heard. That's fucking crazy. 9 fucking months. The kids were young. How old were his kids then? Diddy's kids are also by his side as family and as criminals. I saw that him and his son got charged again recently. I don't know, for some like really crazy shit. But we'll see. All right, guys. Well, yeah, we'll keep an eye on this to see if they unseal any court documents. I'll see you guys for, let me see the court schedule real quick. Okay, so we have Lori Vallow sentencing, and oh my God, Bryan Kohberger and Lori Vallow sentencing are like 2 days, within 2 days of each other. So Bryan Kohberger is going to have his sentencing on the 23rd. It might continue to the 24th if it's going to be longer. They're going to start at 9 a.m. July 23rd is, what day is that? Is that a Monday? July 23rd is a Wednesday. Okay, so Wednesday. And then Lori Vallow will have her sentencing on Friday. Oh boy. Most of the country never heard of the name Kardashian until OJ. Yes, because he was their attorney, but I think I mean the Kardashians kind of made a name for themselves because the whole like sex tape shit too. It's so crazy seeing like the rise of the Kardashians, because I remember when I would follow like celebrity shit, I remember seeing Paris Hilton, and she was with like Kim Kardashian, and Kim Kardashian would have this like busted ass like Louis Vuitton purse that was like, I don't know, it was like so busted. Oh gosh, I don't know. I just remember like yeah, just like following like random celebrity shit. Like she had this like Louis Vuitton purse that she would bring to the beach, and it was like so nasty. It was like damaged by the sun, the waters, and like I remember just her following Paris Hilton around, because I used to follow Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie because they went on that like fucking TV show where they would just like cause mayhem and stuff. We could still fix this. I didn't know what a Kardashian was. The sex tape. Yeah, I mean, the Kardashian name definitely became huge because of the OJ thing, and then the OJ thing died. But like for people who were my age, we didn't really grow up during the OJ thing. It wasn't until like I think the Kardashian blew up, and then people were like, "Oh, well, the dad represented OJ," and I was like, "Oh, OJ, okay, yeah, I know OJ. I've heard of OJ before," but you know, we weren't when the trial was happening. Like we were like people my age were like super young. But yeah, it depends on like what age group you're in. So for me, it's like I knew the Kardashians because of the whole sex tape thing. All right, guys. Let's see. Was there anything else I wanted to? So we talked about Bryan Kohberger's professor. She gave an interview. Again, she said there was no red flags with Bryan Kohberger. She found him to be really polite, that he was very thankful, that he was really respectful, and she was hoping that he can make a huge difference in this, you know, field of study that he was in. Instead, he decides to take a really huge fucking pivot and being one of the subjects that she would study, which is, you know, a fucking like serial killer. And then I talked about briefly about Steve Gonsalves when he did the interview with Ashley, and how they were giving some details about this case, just a tiny little bit. But that's about it. I was wondering if there's anything else that I wanted to cover with you guys. If you guys didn't already watch, I did put out a video a couple days ago, because before we found out about the plea deal, or before the plea deal dropped as a breaking news, I was covering the judge's order about denying the continuance, and he was basically saying that the defense was just asking for continuance just for the sake of a continuance, and just delaying the trial. And it was like really, really fucking brutal towards the defense, in my opinion. And then what's crazy is that the defense filed this motion to provide evidence for 4 alternate perpetrators. Isn't that crazy? What if those names got out of the public? Because 3 of the people knew the victims, apparently. One of them had no connection to the victim at all, but I think they found him because like on surveillance camera like 5 weeks ago at a shopping mall or something, he saw one of the girls and like followed them out of the store, but they decided not to say anything and then just like left. But yeah, isn't it crazy? Like knowing that you did it and then try to point your fingers at other people and then tarnishing their names if their names ever became public. Like, and then because there's always people out there in the public that's going to believe you, right? Which might be a minority, but nowadays with all the crazy shit that's happening, I don't know. The minority is becoming the majority now in some of this shit. Whew. Judge, why do you need a continuance? Ryan's lawyer, the evidence is devastating to my case. But yeah, I don't know. I was like, the court documents in this case were like crazy. you're just finding out more and more and more information, and the public interest in this case was just becoming really intense. I believe they're going to shift the blame to the roommates. No, from what I've read, and even though it was like heavily redacted, it seems like they were going to shift the blame to people that either hung out with the victims that night or were neighbors of the victims that lived nearby. I didn't get the sentiment that they were going to blame the roommate. Initially, I thought they were going to blame the roommate too, that the roommate was in on it. But based on what I read, and that was like really redacted, it seems like one of them or some of them were like the neighbors, and then other people were people that they hung out with before they were murdered. So maybe it was like, you know, friends of a friend or stuff like that, or people who like have been over to the house before. But yeah. Is that right? I had it wrong. I thought she had become estranged. The younger one that was in the house at the time of the murder. Interesting. Are we talking about Barry Morphew? I think the younger one was still living at the house. The older one was already attending college. But I don't think she was estranged. That wasn't the sentiment that I got. But it seems like I think the younger one was mad at the older one because she probably felt like the older one like left her there in the house, and her parents were like not getting along and fighting and arguing or something like that. But I don't know if I'm remembering correctly. We watched it in class, the verdict. They announced the OJ verdict in my school's intercom, 6th grade. What? They did? What? Wait, when was the OJ verdict? What the hell? It's crazy. OJ verdict year. That was in 1995. What? That's crazy. Yeah, 1995, I was still really young. I probably wouldn't have known what was going on. Was that a high school? Oh no, it's 6th grade. That's middle school. What the fuck? That's crazy. Oh, you're talking about OJ. Oh, okay. OJ. Got it. All right, y'all. So that's it for today. I am gonna go wash my face. That's how you can tell if I didn't wash my face. I usually don't wash my face I don't usually touch my face if I have it washed and do my skincare stuff. But I have a bad habit of touching my face if I haven't done anything to it yet. I was in college when they read the verdict. Real, and our class stopped and watched. Damn. Bye, Krusty Corgi. Yeah. I mean, I think I washed my face. I just haven't put the skincare stuff on yet, I don't think. Because I'm planning on washing my hair. Is this one of the most significant guilty pleas of the last decade? I can't really think of any other. Like in terms of plea deals? I don't know. Plea deals. Has there been any other significant plea deals within the past 10 years? None that I can think of off the top of my head. Chris Watts. I don't think Chris Watts took a plea deal, though. Did he? Oh, wait. Did he take a plea deal? I think he did. I think he did, yeah. Hold on. Yeah, I think it was the same thing. Chris Watts was looking at... Damn, Chris Watts was 33 when he pled guilty? Holy shit. I thought he was way older. It's so crazy how... I mean, this was back in 2018, but now that I'm reading this in 2025, I'm like, wow, 33 is so young. Back in 2018, I was like, oh, 33 is so old. Oh, okay. So I guess, yeah, Chris Watts pled guilty to spare him the death penalty. Yeah, but the crazy thing with Chris Watts, people send him letters saying they're like, oh, I understand why you did what you did. Like, what the fuck? Are you fucking serious? Your wife was so mean and horrible to you. It's like, hello, he fucking murdered her. She was pregnant and they had 2 kids together. All murdered. Anyways, people are fucking wild. Whew. Okay, yeah, so Chris Watts is another one. Gary Ridgway took a plea deal in 2003 or 4. I think he did to avoid the DP as well. Yeah, I feel like DP is just kind of like a negotiator for, hey, I'm going to plead guilty, just take it off the table. But Gary Ridgway, American serial killer. I'm not familiar with this person. Gary Ridgway, known as the Green River Killer. Or the Green River Strangler. Well, you know, at least Bryan Kohberger doesn't get like a serial killer title, right? I think he probably wanted one. Like there was like the BTK. Yeah, I don't think Bryan Kohberger has like a. It's just like Idaho 4 murders, Idaho 4 student murders. So I think he probably wants to have like a cool serial killer name that will be forever memorialized in history. Ariel Castro. Oh God. Yeah. Ugh. Ariel Castro. Ugh. I believe he told the prosecution where all the bodies were. Whew. I was just thinking about Chris Watts today. I totally forgot he pled guilty. Jeez. Yeah, I think when the Chris Watts thing was happening, I don't think I was like super into true crime. But I do remember hearing about it because it was such a big thing. Those are that come to mind when I think of people I would have much preferred seeing them go to trial and then face a jury. The Weenie Man Fitz. Oh wait, there's some press conference happening right now. Okay, good thing I waited.
Terrible journey.
Who is this? Maddie's family speaks out after guilty plea. Oh, I actually do want to know what the Mogan family think about this.
Victim families, and then secondly, in terms of
Vivacious and Malarames. 962 days ago, we lost our Maddie, our kind, loving, vivacious, and caring daughter full of purpose and promise. We are grateful for the gift of her life, and we have grieved the loss of that life during each of these 962 days. We love you, Maddie, and we miss you. We are grateful for the gift of the young, vivacious, promising lives of Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan. And we deeply, deeply mourn their senseless loss. We remain in solidarity with their families and friends, and we continue to shower them with our prayers and support. We are grateful for their prayers, love, and support that they have given us. They have helped us and sustained us during our darkest times. We are grateful to the prosecutor, Bill Thompson, and his dedicated and caring team, including victim coordinators, Kim and Stacy, who have helped to guide us through the sometimes confusing and disorienting legal process. Thank you for all your dedicated, diligent, and tireless commitment to justice and the successful outcome reached today. We support the plea agreement 100%. While we know there are some who do not support it, we ask that they respect our belief that this is the best outcome possible for the victims, their families, and the state of Idaho. We extend our deep gratitude to the many law enforcement officers and staff who worked tirelessly to obtain the critical evidence that brought justice today, including the Moscow Police Department, the FBI, the Idaho State Patrol, and the Lehigh County Sheriff's Department. We are deeply grateful to Judge Hippler and Judge John Judge before him. We thank you for your diligence, thoughtfulness, and judicial guidance. We appreciate the difficult work you have done to balance the rights of all involved and to uphold the rule of law. You have had our prayers and support throughout this case. We send our love and gratitude to the many family and friends who have supported us, cared for us, and helped us to heal our open emotional wounds. To the good people of North Idaho, who have showered us with kindness and support, we thank you. We also mourn today with you the recent tragic and senseless loss of two brave North Idaho firefighters.
I think this is the attorney that represented that's representing Madison Mogan, by the way.
We extend our prayers and support to their families.
Oh yeah, that's so sad. The whole firefighters thing, like, so sad and so fucked up.
You are not alone.
No, Bryan Kohberger is not the firefighter shooter. That person's name is, what the fuck was her name again? They had like a interesting, weird name. But no, Bryan Kohberger is the one that murdered. Well, now we can say because he pled guilty to it. He murdered the 4 students. It was like 2-3 years ago, almost 3 years ago.
We understand your pain. For all parents who have endured the loss of a child, we know recovery is a long and at times an almost unbearable journey. But you are not alone. And there is hope and there is healing.
Oh, so sad.
We thank those in the press who have respected our privacy and the grieving process, and the privacy and grieving process of the families of Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan. To others in the press, we gently encourage you to do the same. We thank the many people across our nation and beyond who have reached out to us, prayed for us, and extended their kindness. You too have helped us on our journey to heal. We now embark on a new path. We turn from tragedy and mourning. We turn from darkness and uncertainty of the legal process to the light of the future. We have closure. We embark on a path of hope and healing. We invite all of those who have mourned with us to join us, and we wish you well. Thank you. I will now share a few words of my own. Over the past 2 years, I've been amazed and humbled by Karen and Scott's strength, endurance, and faith.
So that's Maddie's parents.
They have uplifted me and so many. They founded a nonprofit to help others in the name of Maddie. They have been a beacon of hope amidst a dark and tragic time. To those young and bright attorneys out there looking for purpose and meaning in your profession, I invite you to join the effort of crime victim attorneys to bring victims justice with compassion, empathy, humility, and understanding. This case is not the end of violence. This case is not the end of lawlessness. We need your help to bring hope and healing to the innocent caught in the crossfire of life. Thank you all.
Sir, could you just say your name one more time?
Leander James, Leander, last name is James. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I think that's Maddie's mom right there, and that's her. I think that's her stepfather. I can't really see because of the glasses. It looks like him. Yeah, it's crazy. Her mom looks just like, or I guess she looks just like her mom. Just like her mom. We had a lady firefighter, veteran of 20 years plus, killed in your state responding to a call about 20 years ago. Brenda Cowan, rest in peace. What happened? I feel like most people would assume Idaho would be a quiet, safe place to raise a family, not tons of petty crime. But man, do a lot of insane, weird cases come out of that state. From Idaho, I'm thinking of like Utah. Yeah, I mean Idaho. Yeah, because it's like Vallow, Daybell. I mean, don't let those people ruin it for you. I remember that case 4 years ago. Yeah, I think it's going to be 3 years this November. Whew. Crazy. All right, guys. So just to reiterate the scheduling, maybe July 23rd to July 24th, sentencing for Bryan Kohberger. There will be victim impact statements. And then July 25th will be the sentencing date for Lori Vallow. That will be about 3 hours long. Really? It was like a 911 call, but then the perpetrator shot her. Jesus. On to Corey Richins. Yep, Corey Richins in Utah. Boy, oh boy. I might read, because so Corey Richins was charged with 26 counts of financial crimes. Maybe we will do a video and go over that. A lot of it's repetitive because a lot of it's already been covered, but there's like some little new details in there. All right, guys. Well, that's it for today. Yeah, thank you so much for watching this together. I appreciate you guys being here. Hope you guys have a good day. I hope that at some point all the family members will feel some sort of, closure, maybe some peace in their lives. But I can certainly understand why there is a lot of frustration with this, why they feel like prosecutors took the easy way out, and why they feel like this plea deal was something that Bryan Kohberger wanted, and him also taking the easy way out as well. But I do hope, this brings closure to the families ultimately at some point. And yeah, I mean, I'm not super mad at this plea deal. Not super mad at it. Thank you, Corgi. Have a great week. Yeah, I hope you guys have a great week. Good luck with the 4th of July shit. You know, ugh, I hate fireworks. Trying to figure out where to go where there's no fireworks. But yeah, you guys have a happy holiday. Take care. Stay safe out there. Take care of your bubbas. You know, if they're scared of the fireworks. We have to get out of our neighborhood because all of my neighbors, they all do the fireworks shit. It's like really fucking annoying. Later, Gators. Bye, Go Lucky. Bye, Moondog. But yeah, I can totally feel that sense of lack of satisfaction in this, where it's like, well, we want Bryan Kohberger to go up there and confess to these crimes, and not only that, but have remorse, or, you know, to explain to us why he did it, how he did it, and all that shit. But yeah. So we'll see what happens at sentencing. All right, guys. Well, you guys have a good one. Take care, and I will see you guys later. Wild. I can't believe this is basically the end of this case. Almost 3